Hello, this is Teresa, and thanks for joining me today. Today's little chat in kind of a craft with me. Should have probably mostly said chat, but we'll see. We'll probably craft a little bit. Prep work is crafting, actually. So yes. All right, now that I've talked myself into that, today's topic is intimacy in crafting. So what does that mean, intimacy in crafting? I use that word with my full-time job as a bookkeeper, and it's something that I explain to folks about how important it is. Craft a little bit. Hang on. Work is crafting, actually. So yes. Okay. There, I thought I turned the sound off, but I was actually experimenting with some things to try and have a better setup for doing videos, and I had the volume off at first, and then I was looking at a video to try and see how to turn my keyboard off on my laptop so that I could close the lid and still be able to use my second monitor, yada yada. Probably very uninteresting tech stuff. So let's go ahead and look at my desktop. And I just have some papers out here. So I was doing this, and then I thought I should just go online and make this my video for today. So back to the topic of intimacy with crafting. I was saying that I use that term with bookkeeping because the more I know a client's books, the better of a bookkeeper I am. And it's kind of like the more you know your husband or your child, the better wife or mother you are, and vice versa. You know, a husband is a good husband when he knows his wife intimately. And that means what colors she likes to wear, how she likes to be complimented or not complimented, whether you should talk to her before she has her coffee in the morning, so on and so forth. Those all are a deeper understanding, a more intimate understanding of your significant other. Same thing for bookkeeping. When I know that a client uses A, B, and C bank accounts, or they like to use this type of customization, then I can do bookkeeping on their books the way that they want it. Crafting, this word came about when I realized that the more I look at, touch, study, so on and so forth, my materials, the more I get to know them, and the better of a crafter it makes me. For instance, I was going through some piles again. I'm always looking at how I have things organized and how I can better organize so that I can see my products and remember to use them. So in this case, these papers were in an ephemera box, and I was like, I need to put that in an ephemera folder in a place where I know where to find them, which would be this ephemera folder, and because I have other papers in here. Now, I did some bigger papers like this last night, and they are in a bigger box. But anyways, so what I was doing was, this one let's see, this one I haven't worked on at all. This one is very wrinkled and stiff, which in some cases that's kind of cool, but I personally like it to be a little bit more soft and pliable, and there's a couple things that I do to make that happen. This one I've worked out to where I want it to be. So I was working on this one, and then that's when I decided I should just go online. So one thing that I do is I take my bone folder and I just smooth it out with the bone folder, which is all well and good, but there's more that you can do. One of the things that you learn to do when you're crafting and you're manipulating your papers is that you can stretch the fibers of paper, and the bone folder is a good tool for doing that. So you pull and curl basically is what you're doing, and then you can turn to the other side. And when your paper is small enough, it was hard to do this last night with my bigger pages, but for a piece of paper that's this small that I'm using as a journaling paper, it's a little bit easier to get into the middle. And you want to do it slow because you're distressing this paper. You're breaking up the fibers in the paper that make the paper strong, so that it will be softer. It will look like it's more aged. I'm not sure if that was good English or not. And I'm working with the paper. I'm getting to know it. And the same thing is when you get paper, like scrapbook paper, or in my case, this is designer series paper from Stampin' Up. When I get paper, I like to do what is called love it, chop it. And so instead of taking my paper and filing it away in a folder, like I have these 12 by 12 folders. Well, they're more than 12 by 12, but they hold 12 by 12 paper. And I hold my designer series paper in here, my acetate window paper, my vellum, and different things like that. My foils. But then when I cut them down, I put them somewhere else usually. So these were cut down, and so I loved it, chopped it. So that's the first step, is to cut your paper down, to get to know it, because you end up looking at it when you're cutting it for directions. You know, do I want the flowers to go that way, or do I want them to go that way? And while you're doing that, you're starting to study the paper a little bit, and you're starting to get to know it a bit more. So this one is about as flat as I think it will go. Now this one is really stiff. So we're going to start off with smoothing it out with the bone folder. Now it's starting to want to tear a little bit, so I have to be a little bit more gentle. It's really nice to do it this way along the edges, because that really helps to get those edges smoothed out. I mean, it's fine to do this because you still have so much character in this. I used to have an embossing folder that retired, and so I sold it, and now I'm sorry that I did. And it was called Old World Paper. Great embossing folder. I love it. Okay, now I'm going to show you one other thing that I do to make paper feel almost like cloth. I have a old piece of music paper that I love to touch it because it feels like cloth. Really soft cloth. So another thing that you can do to achieve that is, I'm looking over here in my stuff, and right here I have glycerin. So when you take glycerin and you add it to ink and you ink your paper with it, it really makes it soft. So I'm not going to experiment with that paper. I'm going to experiment with this paper that has been tea dyed and has had some mixed media work on it. So usually I mix the glycerin with an ink, but the other day I was thinking, I wonder what would happen if I have some daubers down here, but they're buried. I'm still working on the organization of this bottom container because it's really hard to get into there. So I'm going to think. Okay, that's kind of beige. Let's use a yellow. So some ink might come off, but probably not a lot because I haven't used this brush for a while. So I'm just gonna put some glycerin on there, and I'm gonna do like I normally do, only without ink. So I'm just gonna like shade this paper with the glycerin. And usually I only do one side, but because I'm experimenting, because I've done this before with ink, and oh my gosh, the paper is so soft. I'm going to turn it over, and I'm going to do some on the back side. And so the yellow ink that was on the brush is coming off. But I love having glycerin in my stash. And I'm just massaging that glycerin into the paper. And now the paper is softer feeling. It's still very sturdy paper because I think this is the heavy, very vanilla. So it's going to have a little different feel than some of the lighter weight papers. But again, then I can take my bone folder and I can start to break up the fibers in the paper. Got to be careful though, I just tore the paper a little bit. I don't worry about that a lot with junk journaling though, because tears are a good thing. Sorry, I gotta take a drink. Talking dries people's throats out. Okay, that should help. Okay, I'm gonna leave that piece alone now. And I'm going to take a piece of copy paper and I'm going to try glycerin on that. So this has been tea dyed. You want to try and do this in different angles, up and down, to the sides, whatever you can do without tearing the paper. Okay, it feels nice and thin there. I'm going to try a little bit more. Massage a little bit more of this glycerin into this side. Just breaking up that paper. The fibers in the paper. So now, of course, you can't do this, but I can take a piece that I didn't do that with, and a piece that I didn't do that with, and a piece that I did, and there is a definite difference to what this paper feels like and what this paper feels like. And so not necessarily, you know, that it's going to affect the project a lot, but kind of sort of it does. There is definitely a visual difference between this label that I've manipulated, and now I will go ahead and ink it. So some days, you know, instead of trying to finish a journal or even to pre-make ephemera, some days you need to just plain play and experiment with your papers, with your products. So the next thing I am interested in doing is taking this sheet and putting some glycerin on it. I'm going to do both sides again. I'm going to massage that glycerin into the paper. And now this time, actually I'm going to break it up a little bit more with the bone folder. So now it feels soft, and now I'm going to crumple it with the glycerin. Usually I crumple with water or tea dye or something like that. Okay, now I'm going to unfold it. And I can feel those fibers breaking up more. I love to scrunch paper anyways. Now I'm just going to put a little bit of glycerin on my finger, because sometimes I like to feel what I'm doing when I'm working with things. It's just kind of like, you know, you've got a baker, or yeah, like a baker who's making cookies or bread or something. Sometimes they just throw that spoon to the side and they have to put their hands into the dough or the cake mix or something. Maybe not so much the cake mix, but like when I make meatloaf, oh yeah, I wash my hands and I have to get my hands in there to be able to do what I want to do with that mixture of meat and other ingredients. So here, when I use my hands, then I can feel where maybe I want to massage more glycerin into this paper. And even though this particular process might not be the ticket for what I want to do for labels all the time. It may lead to other ideas, especially if you're the type of person who is making journals for to sell and you want to bring a lot of quality and unique characteristics and signature type processes that say this is a journal that's made by Teresa Conway-Hayes or Betty Smith, whoever you are. And then people will get to know you and they'll say, oh yeah, I know what kind of product she puts out. So I think that definitely does make a big difference. Now, this will need to dry, and it will dry very soft. So if you try this process and you touch this paper and you touch this paper, you will definitely see a big difference. One of the things to keep in mind is that I use heavier papers even if it is copy paper. Like my copy paper is as heavy of a poundage as I could find. And I'm looking over here, I forgot I put the package away. But it is some heavy duty paper. And it's thicker than copy paper that I've ever used before. I want to say it's even 200 GSM, but I might be wrong. So yeah, my memory isn't all that great. But that is something that you can do and you can experiment with. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give this a try. I'm going to do it on one of these papers. I did some pink paper the other day and it was so beautiful. I just loved it. So I'm just massaging that glycerin into the paper. Now the next thing is I don't think I've experimented with this before, is golly gee, I want this to be journaling paper. I want to be able to write on it because I thought that this would be a really cool piece of paper to use as journaling paper because there's already script on this paper and then I tea dyed it or coffee dyed it. So now that I've massaged glycerin into this and it's not dry yet, let's see, does this feel dry? Yeah, I don't think these feel dry yet. But so now I wonder, what is it going to be like? And I don't want to waste this piece. So this piece is cool, but I don't mind writing on it. So let's see. What's going to be like to write on this paper that has glycerin? Let's test that out. I love using my quill pen. Journal with me. Okay, that's not bad. I don't see any issues with that. Now this is going to dry more, so it'll be interesting to test it out a little bit more after this dries more. But I don't see any issues. I always use my acrylic blocks to use to distribute as my like dish for my glycerin. And then if you take a wet wipe, it wipes right off. And because it has a little bit of residue on it, I might take a paper towel and dry it. And then I can throw my acrylic block back into its little place where it's kept at. I don't worry about getting the glycerin off of my brushes. That's part of your art, is that, you know, you've got different artistic types, like some that will maybe clean all their stuff. They'll always have a good dauber on their daubers. It's kind of like me when I eat. I don't like my different foods to touch each other. But with my art, I don't care. So if there's a little bit of glycerin on here and I go to do another project that I didn't necessarily want glycerin on, but it is there and there's some residual residue left of it, then that's just part of my art. And to my knowledge, to my memory, that hasn't caused a problem in the past. It falls right in with that happy accident concept. Now, I don't have a 10-second rule like some people do, but I do have a happy accident rule, and it works really nice for the most part. Who knows? Maybe even glycerin is good for your skin. I don't know. But, oh, what do you know? It says skincare. Very good. So playing with this stuff is good for your skin. It says skin soak, aromatherapy bath, preserves flowers and leaves. So this is a good product to have in your craft room. I use the glycerin 99.5, and there's no way I'm going to be able to pronounce that word. I'm not even sure what it means. I think it has something to do with how it absorbs into your skin. Humco is the brand. So that's what I use, and the only warning is to just be careful if it's been tampered with. But it's a soothing and moisturizing agent in creams and lotions, also used in certain oral pharmaceuticals for sweetening, solvent, and preservative properties. Also in glycerin suppositories. Good to know. So anyways, that is my 2 cents today. It's about glycerin and how you can use it in your crafting so that you can become more intimate with your crafting products. All right, thanks for your time. I hope I shared something of interest with you, and if all goes